Thanks, everyone. And as you can see here, this deck actually came from product management, as it should. They're the folks who are doing all this great work for us. So the deck is kind of divided into two. First is a why of 4.3, and then the second half is what's coming in Service Pack 2. So we'll get a little bit of both flavors in there.
Patrick, if you don't mind, just on the bottom of your screen, if you could just hit hide.
Oh, okay, sure. Yep, no worries, got it. Okay, all right, so the usual legal disclaimer, since we're talking about futures, don't make your buying decision based on this, but hopefully you're a nice, loyal stalwart, and it's just cool stuff that you're seeing. And let's start with the most important message to me, which is that SAP is committed to continuing to invest in the on-premise BI suite. There's still a lot of FUD out there from our competitors that Bob J is dead and all those nonsense. So, I'm always happy to put this as the first quote. And that's also evidenced in our public-facing documents, specifically the BI Statement of Direction that we first put out in October of 2019 and that we've updated for February of 2021. A quick Google search will find that for you. So what does that mean? Well, it does mean that our BI portfolio does in fact comprise two key platforms. So first is SAP Analytics Cloud, right? And that is SAP's strategic platform going forward for all of our applications, but also for innovations like AI and ML and natural language and things like that. But there are many who still prefer to manage their applications on-premise or need to, and the Bob J suite is there for that, and it remains the most scalable enterprise reporting solution that we have out there. And so, we do have those two key solutions. So if we're looking at our investment focus areas, obviously it's on those two platforms. But to me, the more important piece is we also are investing heavily in interoperability between the two platforms. What does that mean? Well, as you're moving to the cloud, or when you want to move to the cloud, we want you to be able to reuse as much of your Bob J as you can. So we'll talk about some of that with the 4.3 release and strides we've made from the hybrid perspective. So why 4.3? We'll start with that. The three pillars or themes of the 4.3 release are what you see here on the screen. The first and most important to me is we've overhauled the user experience. We'll talk about that in depth going forward. Second in importance, which is a new one for those of you who've been around a long time, and that's hybrid. So that interoperability I just spoke about, making sure that that hybrid theme is key from not just a, hey, I'm using on-prem and cloud in parallel, actually have these two platforms tethered together from a technical standpoint. And then enterprise readiness has always been a pillar of our releases, and so we continue with that as well. So first up in user experience is we have a new BI Launchpad. So one of the big complaints we've always gotten is that Bob J was starting to feel a little old, a little long in the tooth, if you will, especially when people are seeing new tools like Tableau and Click and Power BI and things like that that just have more of a modern feel. So we started with the Launchpad so that when new users come in, they have a more modern user experience. We call it Fiori-like. So for those who are not in the bigger, broader SAP application family, Fiori is two things. It's a technology that we have embedded in our applications, but also it's a design conceit, and you're seeing the fruits of that on the screen right now. It's big tiles that show, colorful information and factoids, and so we've wrapped that capability into the Bob J platform and Webby as well. So as of 4.3, this is the new Launchpad experience. We will not ship the existing Launchpad, but fear not, because we're at full functional parity with the old Launchpad. And we've in fact included some new enhancements along the lines of scheduling and publication. So we've even improved it. And but all of your content from 4.2, you don't have to do anything to it. It simply functions in 4.3. You're good to go. But we've also updated the BI workspace capability to conform to this new Launchpad, which I think is one of those unhidden gems of business objects.
This actually definitely looks a lot more user-friendly. And Patrick, you confirmed that basically it is at parity with...
Exactly. That's right, Bruno. So it's at parity, and also, to me, the more important piece, especially for the next session, is when you upgrade to 4.3, you don't have to do anything to your existing content. It simply functions within the framework of this new Launchpad. And the new Launchpad will let you do everything you want, plus new scheduling and publication granularity control that you have.
And in terms of training, is it something that's complicated? Because I think it was from 4.2 SP6, if I recall, you've got both modes.
Yep. Yeah. So for those who don't know, since Service Pack 5, actually with 4.2, you've actually had the ability to view what this experience will look like as it's grown from Service Pack 6 through 4.3. It's a separate URL that you can enable without having to do any work either. So for those of you, if you talk to your administrators out there in 4.2, you should be able to see what this starts to feel like. Actually, from a training standpoint, Bruno, I would say it's easier and less intrusive at all. I think it's more in the modern user experience sense. I think it's more kind of easy to pick up without even having to look into sort of education. I think it gives you more visual tabs on where to go and visual indicators, and I think it's much more self-explanatory in a way.
Thanks a lot, Patrick, because I know that's a big. This is we've got lots of questions around that because a lot of people say, "Hey, I want to upgrade, but I'm really concerned about the new Fiori look. It looks great, but I've been used to."
Yeah. In fact, if anything, I think when you're bringing new users in, it kind of has that app tile look and feel to them. So, a whole generation that's really been brought up on smartphones and things like that, I think they'll find this a more natural experience regardless.
And just, while we move on, I'll let you move on, Patrick, and I'll just ask the first question to the audience. By the way, on which BobJ version are you guys on? So please put some comments. Go ahead, Patrick.
I'm hoping we don't find any R2s out there, but you never know. Okay, so the big news though in 4.3 to me is the new Webby client. So Webby has gotten a massive overhaul, and as I said in my intro, I'm an old Webby guy. I love Webby. I think it's the best tool out there. We've done some great things with it. So first and foremost, it's now a single client. So whether I'm on the web or on the desktop, and ultimately when we move to the mobile device as well, and whether I'm a viewer or a designer, it's all the same user experience, which is key, right? So, Bruno mentioned training on just the Launchpad piece. Well, the training motion for Webby itself, I think, becomes much easier now as well. And once again, in terms of capabilities, the query panel is at full parity with the Webby Java applet and the Webby Rich client from Service Pack 7 on. It's all HTML5 now, so no more Java, which should make a lot of you happy because can't imagine how many times we get complaints about Java versions and things like that. So that's all gone now. And it's kind of got that Fiori design conceit at its heart as well. One thing that actually 360 and Bruno have been great at trying to advertise too is that if you look at Webby as kind of the original self-service ad hoc tool, it was really still thought of more as operational reporting or ad hoc reporting from that perspective. But we've been doing a lot in terms of the UI to really enable it to be more visually compelling. And so a lot of people are using it as a light dashboard tool, which, for most people, the term dashboard doesn't really imply something that's heavily coded with a lot of guided pathways. So really, I think more and more we're seeing a lot of our old customers like yourselves who are using Webby as their dashboarding tool for those lightweight use cases. And I think that's a huge thing. And Bruno's helped us advertise that and show some of the benefits of that. Then the other key thing is we've rejuvenated the user experience in terms of simplification. So gone is the double ribbon from Windows circa 2008. So it doesn't look as complex as it used to, which I think we could all agree when we're bringing new users in, it's been daunting for them to look at Webby like, oh my gosh, where do I go? Where do I start? So we've replaced that with a lightweight menu ribbon at the top, not ribbon, bar. So that lightweight bar, and then we've got panels that come in from the right-hand side to build and format and design. So, you bring those panels in only when you need to, which is a key thing too for saving space as you're designing as well. So the other big thing about this is the screenshot you're looking at. For those of you who have looked at Analytics Cloud or Lumira, you might say, hey, you know what? This kind of looks and feels like that. So to me, another big thing about this rejuvenated user experience is that we are finally after 15 years of advertising wanting to, we kind of have a harmonized view and harmonized user experience across the different clients. And I think that's pretty huge. And the key thing is that bottom statement. Overall, these enhancements are really meant to kind of return Webby, in my mind, to its self-service glory. So let's take it away from those tools like Tableau and Click and even Lumira that are great visually, but they're not as compelling from a pure analytics firepower standpoint. Let's bring Webby back to that forefront with this kind of capability.
And I'm glad you say that, because initially when BusinessObjects was created, the intention actually was to have business objects as a self-service where
exactly
in the old days, if you needed some information, well, damn, I have to go and see my DBA and wait for a couple of days and the information wouldn't be as accurate. And, that was the whole idea behind business objects where, you've got self-service and leveraging universes. And just a little story around that is, at the time, if you speak to the business objects co-founder, Denis Père, talking with him, he said, Bruno, before I created business objects, I created something that was called before Easy SQL. So that was the idea, which at the end was not so easy.
Right.
That's why you had to go towards business object. You had to create the semantic layer, but the whole idea was self-service.
Yep. And that's the thing too. I mean, I think that the semantic layer, always was the secret sauce of business objects. And I still hold it as the best thing out there, because really self-service is great. But if I'm not someone who even knows what SQL stands for or had ever used it, having that kind of the semantic layer to help me through it, I think has always been a key thing for us. And a lot of the Tableaus and Clicks of the world, you still have to sort of know what you're doing from a data standpoint these days. And I think the universe is a key thing for that. Any other thoughts, Bruno?
No, I was just looking at the versions of business objects, and I think, Patrick, you scared everyone, I have to tell you, because people that have got old versions, they don't have to say anything because they're probably afraid of their peers. So frankly, right now, out of all the answers, I don't see anybody with 4.1. I see somebody who's got some Desky still.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. No, I see a 4.1. Yeah, you're right. I see 4.1. But frankly, pretty much everyone is in 4.2, and we've actually see 2 persons that are in 4.3 and 1 person going to 4.3. So
that's great. Yeah, I think we've seen kind of a renaissance of BusinessObjects itself in the 4.2 release, and a lot of people over the course of the last 2 years that we've seen, for what limited resources we have in terms of tracking what versions people are on, 4.2 is definitely moving up there. So that's great to hear. And I think you'll find that that's an easy shift from 4.2 to 4.3 as well. I think you'd agree with that, Bruno.
I do.
Yep. All right. So the Webby user experience is one piece, but then another really cool thing that we've done with Webby is we've got the ability in 4.3 to turn any given Webby document into a data model that can then be used as a source for other documents. Now, why is that cool? Well, let's say Bruno is my stud Webby developer, and I'm, perhaps less visual. I want to do more with tables or other, different visuals and charts and graphics. And so, right now I might have to take his document, copy that document, and then start to delete all the things that he built and rebuild my own. Well, I don't have to do that anymore. I can take all of what he did from a data provider perspective, from a custom measure, custom dimension standpoint, any intellectual capital that he's put into that document, I can use as a data model source now without having to simply do cut and paste and hope for the best. So I think it's a cool way for us to have the concept of power users, power analysts, and then, again, thinking self-service, a cadre of more lightweight users, if you will, who can reuse that content, but more as a data source, again, helping that self-service piece. Any thoughts on that one, Bruno?
No, I was just looking at the questions, and I'll have some questions later on.
Okay. All right.
UNX in 4.3. So,
okay. Yeah, well, I'll talk about that when I get to the timeline.
Definitely.
Yep. Okay. So then that new pillar that you may recall is hybrid. And the first and foremost bit of the hybrid is for you to leverage your existing data and semantics. And that's huge to me. You know, you could be forgiven for thinking that we were cloud only at this point with SAP because our marketing machine is, very much focused on the shiny new toy all the time. But the reality is, no matter what SAP marketing says, people like me know that you will move to cloud when you want to, need to, not when we tell you we think it's a good idea. And so what I like is what we've done here. We've let you use your BobJ investment, especially in terms of universes and now that new Webby data model, to use that as data sources for the cloud. And so the key thing there is it's not even a rip and replace mentality. It's more of a, hey, you know what? I've got a great Webby document and I want to add new things like AI and ML and smart features that we have in SAC. So rather than having to try and replicate that Webby document in the cloud, I can simply use that existing Webby document and extend it with the cloud. So I think that's the best way to look at hybrid, is using what we've got from a universe or a Webby data model perspective and extending those for better analytic use cases or broader analytic use cases. And the other thing is it's live connectivity. So I'm not moving that data to the cloud, which is always a problem as well. I'm simply the metadata of that story or dashboard, whatever you want to call it, from the cloud is meeting the data that we've enabled via the universe or the Webby data model at the browser level. So I think that's a huge thing. And also, a lot of you through the years have done some great work at adding that secondary layer of security into BobJ. And so all of that can now be pushed from BobJ into the cloud as well. So when you're standing up a hybrid environment, all of the groups and teams and things that you've done from a security standpoint, your user management, that can all be pushed into the cloud as well. And finally, we have a tool called Analytics Hub, which you can think of it as perhaps a lightweight BI launchpad for combinations of cloud and on-premise content and also third-party content. So we now have less manual ways to push all of the availability of BobJ content into that Analytics Hub piece. So that's hybrid. Enterprise readiness, usual typical things, right? So security enhancements that we do with every release, installation and deployment, trying to make sure that the downtime for that is as minimal as possible. We've improved our audit capabilities and some of our administration tools. But, frankly, I hope no one from SAP is on to hear me say this, but, frankly, this has always not been our strongest suit. And that's where Bruno and 360 come in to fill a lot of those gaps with some great tools to better look at auditing and things like that we don't always do as well. But, if you are still using us out of the box this way, we do always try to improve what we can with every release. And then timeline. So 4.2 is mainstream for the next 2 years, or well, year and a half, I guess. So at the end of 2022, we will go into Priority 1 support for 2 years after that. Service Pack 9 will be the last SP that we release with 4.2. And then from that point on, it will be only patches that we'll deliver until that P1 support kicks in. And then 4.3, from its inception date of last year, we have a 7-year runway that we always do, but that's not the end necessarily. So that maintenance will go at least until the end of 2027, possibly further. But that's we'll see how we go from different point releases in the future. And since Bruno mentioned the UNV UNX question, so with 4.3, you can still use UNVs. We are not forcing that, but for some number of years now, partners like 360 and ourselves, we've been saying you should definitely start strategizing the move to UNXs. And frankly, I think there's a lot of good to be had with UNX. At the end of 4.3, that will be the time when the last service pack of 4.3 will be the last service pack you can use UNVs. So we will, for whether it's 4.4 or 5.0, wherever we go from there, that's when we will force UNX movement.
And just to the audience, so overall, I know there's been a lot of discussions around UNV, UNX. Please share if you are on UNV today or if you fully converted to UNX. It's always actually quite surprising that UNX has been there for so many years.
Yes.
And that so many of you are still on UNVs. And frankly, it's when you do the upgrade to 4.3, it's just the time to do it because now it's official, is going to go away. So just
I think that's a great point too in upgrades generally, right? That's always a good time for you to take stock of what you've done in the prior release, whether it's 4,000 reports, whether you're using them or not, or things like looking at the semantic layers. It's always a great time to review.
And the conversion, I think, since 4.2 SP5 definitely got a lot better.
Yep.
There are still issues around reporting, and that's where 360 is able to automate the entire process. But honestly speaking, it's it's so much better than what it was. So
Yep, I agree.
just make sure you get it done. And by the way, on the other questions we had, is I saw one person who's saying one of my clients, so is still using XR2. So at least we got one. It still happens occasionally, and I think we had a chat recently where typically we see more people with older versions if you go like in Japan.
Yeah, Japan was always the last one I saw.
They're always a little bit slower in that regards, but it's not so common to be seeing that. And I see a lot of people are saying, UNV, what? Pretty much everyone right now. I mean, there are a few exceptions, but pretty much everybody, or the majority of people, are actually, I think, in UNV. So I see more UNV now. That's quite interesting. So
I mean, for me, the greatest thing I loved with the UNX was just multi-source universes, right? Let's not have the users have to do the combinations of multiple universes at the report level. I love having that data federation capability within the UNX. That alone would have been a reason for me to switch if I was doing it live. But
do you have some other compelling arguments for people to go to UNX?
Well, I think the shared development environment is easier when you're doing a UNX, and I think the reusability of pieces of your UNX are easier to do than we had with the IDT and UNVs. That's probably the biggest thing, though, is that I think faster time to develop and better collaboration when developing, and the multiple sources. Those are my biggies.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So, and when you're looking at 4.3, there are some 4.2 features that did not make it into the current release, which is Service Pack 1. And you can see them listed here, shared elements, extension points, things like that. You'll be happy to see that, are they coming back in 4.3 Service Pack 2? Yes, for the most part. So the only exceptions to that are, the sending to FTP, HANA Online mode, and standalone WebRich client. Zabo's back in 4.3, which I think, for those a lot of old timers, hey, Zabo is always a happy mode to be able to be going into. And queries as a web service and documents as a web service, they still function from 4.2 to 4.3, but you can't edit or modify them or create new ones. We're replacing that concept with OData, and we'll talk about that a little bit further in Service Pack 2. All right. Okay, and then something else that product management wanted to throw in, we have a partner called Need4Viz, and they're using the custom extension capability that we brought into 4.2 with, the ability to bring new chart types in, custom chart types, and they're, really, that's where they're excelling in terms of helping you spruce up your Webby documents, again, moving away from perhaps the traditional reporting kind of mentality, more into dashboarding or even, agile exploration, visual exploration. And so they wanted to throw that in. But, Webby is fully capable to handle these use cases now in great ways. And finally, for those who are looking at moving to the cloud, but you're really not quite there yet with a different tool, BobJ has been cloud ready in terms of multi-tenant and things like that for some number of years now. But we SAP are offering a way for you to shift from perpetual licensing in your on-premise to BobJ in the cloud, if you will. And we call that Private Cloud Edition. So we host it for you. You switch you to subscription licensing. It's got all of your full scope of the on-premise capabilities. We've got different release cycles we can throw in there too. And that, for those of you who are looking to move to a cloud mentality, but not quite ready to go from a tool standpoint yet, this is a nice option for you.
And as well, I think just to go back on the previous slide is
Yep.
In terms of the private cloud edition, also called, I think, the PCE.
Yep.
So right now, I think you guys support clouds from AWS and Azure. Is that correct?
Yep. And we're Google by the end of the year.
Okay, so yeah, you'll have covered pretty much
yep.
the entire landscape. And in terms of cloud there, so overall SAP then will be managing all the upgrades, and I'm assuming the administration, the regression testing, and all
exactly.
the common work that will be handled either by a third party or the customer. Is that correct?
Exactly. And that's why it's advantageous, right? For those who haven't moved to the cloud yet, starting to get into that service provider concept and letting us do all of that grunt work for you so that you can focus on universes and documents and all the good stuff that the platform brings.
I would say we're involved actually in some of these projects right now, and
yep.
The nice thing is that it's like a T-shirt sized.
Yep, exactly.
And the key there is every environment is different, and so you need to make sure that you really do a detailed assessment of your environment, and before you do the decision to understand exactly what you've got, and then define, well, do I need a small, a medium, a large, or whatever it is?
Right.
Because that's going to be very critical on that. You need to make sure it's like, you get a T-shirt, you get a shirt, you want to know, well, what's the right size? Before you get the right size, you might think, well, I need to know what I've got. So that's very critical in that process.
No, that's very true. And actually, we have pretty good protocols in place in terms of trying to assess what is the best T-shirt size for you on a variety of things. So, yeah, that's a great point, though, Bruno. But, we've had a lot of people who have enjoyed moving to this in its prior incarnation names, to some extent because of what Bruno just said, right? There's a lot of complexity that goes in, especially for those of you, I'm sure, who have dealt with support, where you've done various things that to your system that are not always easy to suss out, and they're really the first things that you have to figure out before trying to figure out what the error is, or if there's an error, because sometimes it is deployment versus the actual tool set or platform itself. And so this helps gentrify that for you across, so it's easier to get support. We're handling that service, and we're standing the platform up in the best ways that we see fit, and just dealing then with your data providers and things like that.
And we had a question. I'll take a question from Patrick because it's St. Patrick today. So
I say good name. Love it.
And like we did a webinar last week, so it's an interesting question where a lot of people were saying, I need to do regression testing when I do these upgrades. And Patrick is asking, are there any plans for SAP to do regression testing, in that process of going to 4.3 and going to the PCE, the private cloud edition?
I mean, we do regression testing whenever we release a new point release. So we're doing that on our own dime anyway. But certainly for your existing environments, when you move to the PCE, yes, that's part of the service we would offer, is making sure that everything's functioning as it should in the new environment.
And would you do that on reports then, or?
Yeah, I think that's a different service level agreement. I think at what level you want us to do that, but yeah, there's certainly more available in terms of trying to go down to the document level if that's what you want to try and do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. So that's 4.3, and hopefully everyone's excited about it just generically because it's 4.3. It's cool. It's modern. It's fun. So here we have a preview of what we're looking at doing in Service Pack 2. Now, if you recall from the timeline, it's not due till end of year. So hopefully we don't get you too excited about these things now. We'd rather get you to 4.3 and get excited about it. And then at end of year, this will be your Christmas present, right, of the good stuff in Service Pack 2. So this is a summary of what we're doing right now. And it comes down to report display enhancements, shared elements are back, Webby-rich client modifications, new data sources, of course, for Webby, as we always try to do. We've unified the query panel workflows and some other usability things and semantic layer stuff too, which I'll talk about. So, all right. And by the way, most or a good number of these really come from customers like yourselves as requests. So while some of these things may seem a bit mundane, it is stuff that was requested by you, the customer base. So hopefully you'll see the validity or value to it. So first and foremost, the ability to freeze headers is back in 4.2 or Service Pack 2, excuse me. So depending on the table type that you have, you can freeze your rows and columns and vertical headers as well. And you can see this result in both reading and edit modes. So it's pretty, pretty, again, standard, I would think, but, it's one of those missing things from 4.3 that's back. And we even have a little quick video of what it looks like. So if I'm looking at a table of raw data in a Webby document, I'm scrolling up and down, and then I right mouse click on the table, and I invoke the freezer pane widget. So there it is. So I'm going to go ahead and freeze headers, or freeze my rows, excuse me. And I tell how many rows I want to freeze. Click OK. Click OK again. And now as we scroll through, we will hopefully see that those things froze as we would desire. You'll also notice in the upper left menu bar the display button, so we can turn that freezing on and off very easily without having to go through the panel anymore. So again, not rocket science huge, but I think for most of us who would imagine if you're looking at a large table or grid, it's a pretty big thing to be able to freeze those panes. Okay, the ability to hide reports and the report description. So in this context, a report is referring to what I would normally call a sheet or a tab within the Webby document. And so you've got the ability to, do by formula or just brunt force saying, show hide, ways for you to hide those reports at view time and read time. And so here's an example of that. So once again, on that raw data report, if you will, we're going to go into edit mode. And then on that tab itself, we're going to go to the show hide capability. And so we're going to select what we want to show and hide, which was that tab. So now as we view it in reading mode, you'll notice that the raw data tab is missing as you'd expect. We go back into edit mode and there it is, still there. So again, you can do that from a formulaic standpoint or simply a just show hide upon viewing mode. And these panels that they're looking at on the right-hand side are how you can control that more rigidly or granularly. All right, presentation mode. Think of this as what I'm doing right now from a PowerPoint standpoint. So it lets you look through or cycle through a Webby document from a presentation standpoint, like I'm in slideshow mode. So it'll take each report or tab in that Webby document, and you can select which ones you want to show, how long you want to display them, and how much time between cycling that you'll do. So it's a great way for you to use that Webby document from more of a presentation standpoint. And here's an example of that. So in that same Webby document, I go into presentation mode. I decide on my cycles and what I want to show, how long, and then I'll go and select which tabs or reports I want to show in that presentation cycle. Select a few there, and then click OK ultimately. So now we see the summary page, and then I think it'll cycle to the Geo page soon. and then the KPIs. So yeah, I think you get it though. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's a way for you to simply present that Webby document. Think of it as like, maybe for those of you who know digital boardroom, think of it as a way to look at the, a way for you to show all of that work instead of by using PowerPoint. It's something you can do just from Webby when you're in a large meeting and presenting that numbers back.
Yeah, ultimately there you've got all this reporting, all these dashboards. The goal is to be sharing this information and to be presenting it. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of weird when they first introduced it, but now that I've seen it actually used live at customers, and so it actually has some good efficacy, I think.
I've seen customers with that where they're actually showing the availability of business objects. So I know they've, people, I've seen that type of a presentation.
Yep.
At customers. So I think that's actually pretty nice.
Yeah, me too. Especially, and this is a good one to show, right? When was the last time you would have thought to look at this? Hey, that's a Webby document, right? I mean, we've done so much from a visual standpoint with Webby. It still has all of that analytic firepower, but now it's more visually compelling as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's quite easy to do. So.
Yep, exactly.
As always. Just before we move on, I just want to take a couple of questions we had from the audience. So I know we had the first questions from Hugo. His question was, are there any differences between on-premise and the cloud solution from a functionality perspective?
In terms of the private cloud edition?
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming.
I would assume so. No, it's simply that it's managed by us instead of by you. So, Webby is still Webby. It's just being served up via the cloud, SAP Cloud Data Center versus you guys having to manage it. So there's no difference in capabilities there at all.
On the way to the second question it's funny, I got a comment from Stuart who was saying on what you just shown, saying, it reminds me of embedding Excelsius in PowerPoint. That's very right.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great example. Yep.
So the second question, from Pradeep, is there any feature like if we want to move publication and schedules from old versions to 4.3, then will recurring also move along with that? So if we can display that question from Pradeep. Yeah, here it is.
If I'm reading that correctly, I think you mean, so if you've got a 4.2 document that has a schedule or publication, when you move to 4.3, will that schedule go with it? And the answer is yes. But it's not a matter of like a Webby 4.2 document publishing to a 4.3 document. It's just that the platform is 4.3. And so that Webby document is now served up in the 4.3 environment. Does that make sense? I think.
It does. Probably. Let's move on then.
Okay, sure.
I know there's a lot to show. So. Sure.
For those of you who've used 4.3, you might be a little annoyed by some of the warning messages that you get. And what you see on the left-hand side could be a stack of warning messages that just build on top of one another to the point where you could actually have your screen occluded by these things. So we've gone through smart ways to combine those into more, less intrusive warning messages. As you can see, we've taken on the right-hand side what used to be 5 whole lines and turned that into a header with, different things. It's an annoyance that we've probably let you manage in a better way is probably the nice way to put that. And we have a new chart capability, which is trellising, which, I'm a big fan of this because it lets you add an additional dimension to your charts. And so here we're looking at the same area chart for multiple combinations of country and region. So I think trellising is always a good thing for us to have in any analytic visualization. So it's nice to know that it's there automatically. Shared elements are back. So for those of you who started exploiting this in 4.2, I think this is a huge thing that we've brought back. So, a shared element is any given table, cell, or chart that I can put into my shared element repository and then reuse it in different documents. And the key thing here is, let's say I built a document on Universe 1, and I want to bring in a shared element that was based on something from Universe 2, I don't have to go through all that data provider work. When I select that shared element, all of that underlying capability simply comes with it. So all the resources that made that shared element come with that shared element. So I don't know, for those of you who haven't played with this very much, but from a collaboration standpoint, I think this has been a huge step forward for us. I don't know, Bruno, do you run into shared elements a lot?
Yeah, no, that's something. Bring the shared elements back.
Yeah. So that was a huge customer request. So they're here now, and you can select the shared elements from your main menu toolbar, and you're good to go, right? And then there's a side panel, like I talked about before, that will come in from the right-hand side that let you, modify the shared elements that you're wanting to select or things like that. So here is an example of shared elements. So we go into edit mode on the Webby document, and we are moving around and seeing what our different reports or tabs are. And I apologize, I didn't make the videos, so I was trying to interpret what they were doing as I was viewing the thing when I first got it. But I think ultimately what we're going to do is go back to that GeoMap page, and we're going to define one of those charts, one of those geo charts, as a shared element. Yep, here we are. So we're going to take this middle one, and we're going to go to our shared elements context menu. And so now we're looking at the library. So this is all of the shared elements that we have available in the repository. And we are finding this particular one just to note that it is in fact a shared element. And now we're going to go ahead and create a new report or new tab, and we'll use that shared element. So plus sign to add a new report. And we'll go back to the shared element menu. Go through the library once again that we've already seen, and use the most recently used ones as an easy way to find that GeoMap. And voila. Okay. Nice. Not going a little lag on the voila there. Okay, so there it is. But again, I think it's less cool in a report itself as it is, again, with the concept of Bruno, my stud Webby developer, built some cool stuff. I want to reuse that in my own new document. That's really where the shared elements start to bring more value from a collaboration standpoint.
That's very slick. Hey, Patrick, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
If we all promise you that we'll upgrade to 4.3 quickly, will you be?
I'm going to hold you to that.
Will you be releasing SP2 faster this summer?
I don't know. I can't speak for product management. I would imagine if there's a way to bring it forward faster, they will do so. I would also imagine that hopefully, perhaps, some of these things might show up in patches before the full release, but I cannot speak for product management on that one. I can certainly look into it for you, though. Bruno and I can try and send wine to Gregory over in Paris and see if he'll, jump to what we were after.
Well, today it's Guinness, so.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's right. Or some Irish whiskey,
That's right.
Okay, Webby Rich Client. Probably the biggest thing, and as Bruno mentioned, we did a webinar last week, and one of the things people were asking about the most was, can we get to local Excel files so that I don't have to upload that Excel file into the BI platform in order to use it? And yes, that's back now in Service Pack 2. So local data providers, whether it's text or Excel, and the ability to refresh on the server is back. Woohoo! All right, new data sources. So I'll go into that. So as I already mentioned, query as a web service and document as a web service that you have right now will still function, but you cannot create new ones or edit those old ones in 4.3. So we're switching that to two new use cases where instead of a query as a web service per se, we're going to generate an OData link from a block or a cell or a table so that other products can retrieve that data from the document as they would do today with the QAs or DAWs. And then you can use an external website as well via OData as a data source for Webby. We also are going to allow you to use Google Drive as a data source repository. So you'll be, and I think we explained that on the next slide, right? So first, generating the OData piece. So we can generate that OData link for other tools to use to grab that data. And then Webby can now use OData links as a data source as well. And then the data source piece, so Google Drive. So with your Google credentials, you can sign in via Webby and look at Google spreadsheets, text documents, and the Microsoft Excel files that you have stored in Google Drive and use those as data sources. So I think that's huge. I think a lot of people like to use Google Drive and other similar, SharePoint, things like that. So I think that by moving to Google Drive, which is one of the more common ones that we've seen and had requested from customers, I think this is a great way for you to, share data that you'd want to do analysis on. You can also export now to, Excel, PDF, HTML, text, and CSV. You can download that locally or to Google Drive or the BI platform repository if you so desire. So again, something we've brought back that should have been there all along if you think about it that way. And then when you're in the data source selection before you get into the query panel, we've now organized those by category. So we've got your BI platform pieces, your local pieces, the Google Drive aspect, and then any web services that you find as well. So it's all right there for you when you are starting to select a data source. It's easy to see. And then on the query panel subject as well, one other new thing, we've combined what are right now 2 different workflows. So there are 2 flavors of the query panel. First is for the semantic layer type, universes, UNXs, WIDs, etc. And then the custom or local data provider type, for spreadsheets, text, SQL, OData, etc. So right now, these are 2 different query panels with different capabilities. So in Service Pack 2, we are combining those into a single query panel, and then the query panel will simply understand what it is looking at from a data source. So for instance, we won't have aggregation available for universes if we don't have the right types. And, we won't be able to do hierarchies in a text file, things like that. So that'll just happen automatically, but it'll be a single query panel user experience. So I think, again, for end users, that's nice to not have to train them up.
We had a question from Pradeep, a quick one. He wanted clarification. Query as a web service will migrate, or we have to create new in 4.3 using OData?
No, that's the new way to create new use cases of what was query as a web service. So the old queries as a web service should cascade into 4.3 and be usable. You just can't modify them. You can't create new ones. So the old ones are there, but if you're going to go down new pathways with that, you have to do this new OData method.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yep. Okay. So again, it's a single query.
Actually, Pradeep is, any conversion feature like report conversion. So he just added that. Okay.
So you don't have to convert reports, as we were talking about earlier. You simply turn on 4.3 and those old documents that you created in 4.1 or 4.2 simply render appropriately.
Excellent. Thank you.
So that's one of the nice things. And again, for the next session, when they talk about upgrading, that's key for you to know is that you don't have to go through any process of trying to upgrade content. You're upgrading the underlying platform, and it will give you those new user experiences, but on the old document without you having to modify the authoring of that document. Okay. So another usability enhancement, people are always asking about prompts and input controls. So the prompt dialog box that we have in Service Pack 2 will now display both the prompt itself and the selected values. So it's a nice 2-panel wizard. And in terms of input controls, you've got the ability to show more from the hierarchy tree and also resize that input control option, which, it's always a kind of a formatting thing that people really like. And speaking of formatting, the format painter is back. So, that's something that, excuse me, I had to grab some water there. Excuse me. The format painter is always a nice thing. That's back. And date time pickers are functional now. So people who prefer to use calendar objects instead of typing in their bad date, it's all good there.
Yeah, that's always easier. You've got a better, it just goes towards self-service. So that's
Exactly.
That's very, very welcome. And, just going.
Again, it's really back to that modernization aspect, right? So those users who are coming on who expect these sorts of things just to be there, it's there. So that's good to know. Hyperlinking to document targets is back. That's another huge thing, especially if you're doing things like using Webby as a dashboard, where you're going to have guided pathways from document to document, from aggregate to detail, things like that. So the hyperlink window or wizard is back. So that's all nice and good. I've always been a big fan of this capability. SDK. So I'm not a big coder myself, but since the question always comes up, we do have some new Webby REST web services, and extensions for the UI will be back as well. So you'll be able to extend and modify your side panels, your status bar, and your perspectives. And the JavaScript API is back as well. So, and then, we've not always been the best at this, but new documentation for the SDKs and a new white paper on using them as well. So expect all that goodness. And then this is a repeat of the timeline, so I'll skip through that real quick. And then in terms of product direction, where are we going? So, Service Pack 3 and beyond, we'll be looking at Webby alerting, adding trend lines, the ability to turn them on and off very easily. Data set exploration via facets, which is, think of more of that agile exploration kind of perspective. That's going to help with that. We're going to continue to improve the quote-unquote dashboarding capabilities for Webby. Again, that really kind of comes down to what people describe as what a dashboard really is. But I think for most use cases at this point, Webby can really meet the mail, but we're going to continue to double down on that some. The ability to do better table and chart sizing with scroll bars. Intro report document linking is going to be back. The ability to customize tooltips, always a request since the R2 days. And then we'll continue with more formatting capabilities, and we'll just continually modernize that user interface and UI and UX as we have already done with just the 4.3 to start with.
In terms of direction, there's a document that you can search online.
Correct.
And maybe we put later on during the day in the chat box or so. But there's like a statement of direction from SAP.
Exactly. If you Google SAP BI statement of direction, you'll get a quick link to it. And there's a blog written about it as well by Eva Van de Zandt.
Yes, I'm actually pulling it out, and I'll show.
And that's it.
Just hold on. I think I just got the link. I'll share it to our team, and they'll be sharing it in the in the comments on the side. So
okay, great.
We have a little bit of time just to take a few
absolutely.
questions. So okay, there are a lot of questions. So okay, so we've got a question from De Jong. I'm just trying to have it appear on, saying, is it required to have separate licenses to upgrade from 4.2 to 4.3?
It is not required to have separate licenses. So if you're a licensed user, then you can upgrade whenever you want. However, you will be requested to get a new license key. So that's just more of a paperwork thing. And actually, internally, that helps us track who has actually moved to 4.3. But so you will need that license key, but you don't have to go and modify your license per se or do anything like that.
Okay. Then we got another question. Any new feature in the CMC on 4.3?
I believe there are, but I don't have those right off the top of my head right now. But a lot more in terms of, actually, you know what? Let me go back to this. Let me go to the readiness slide, because that might be a good reminder to me. So I apologize.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have some new administration tools, right? But also some updates that we've done to the BI admin cockpit that we started in 4.2. So we've updated that. We've updated audit functionalities in the CMC. Obviously, some of the new capabilities you can control now through the CMC as well that weren't there before. One good thing, though, for those of you in the IT world who tend not to like or care for modern user experiences, the CMC still looks and feels the same. So there are those who I've talked to, they love this for the end users, but they don't want to have to be searching through something that doesn't feel or look right to them. And so, one good news thing to me is that the CMC experience is still the same for you folks.
Yeah, it's, people, they have their habits.
Exactly.
It's always very difficult to change, and
Exactly.
for good reasons, but on the other side, you need to bring improvement. So that's always a critical one. We've got a question from John.
Okay.
Will there be a tool to report Crystal reports to UNX Universe like there is for Web Intelligence?
So Crystal Enterprise right now. So there are two flavors of Crystal that you can install with 4.2 and again with 4.3. So there's Crystal for Year, which is now Crystal 2020, which is your traditional Crystal, get to any data in any way that you want. And then Crystal Enterprise, which goes more to the universal and semantic layer as a data source. So we've already gone through that where we've got the ability for you to try and move those Crystal Enterprise documents from a UNV to a UNX, but I haven't played with that much myself. So.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, too, I'm sorry, Bruno, on that subject. In last week's webinar, we did this more, but there are, in fact, Crystal enhancements to 4.3 as well. So you've got 64-bit clients now for Crystal, and some other things you can do in terms of freezing of headers and frames and stuff from a more automatic and easy way to do it than before. So even Crystal's getting some love in 4.3. We just didn't focus on it as much here.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Next question from Vishal. Can we implement some forecasting or predictive analytics using 4.3?
So our answer to that would be, that's a great use case to start looking at Analytics Cloud. So that forecasting is something we have in Analytics Cloud, and the ability for you to then to take a Webby document and use it as a data model, or simply to start a new story in SAC with the same universe or universes and do your forecasting in that. That's a great use case for moving to that hybrid mode.
Thank you. Then we've got another question. We use business objects along with Epic Systems, so that's healthcare. Healthcare system. I guess 4.3 has issues with the BI portal integration with Epic. Do you know if this has been resolved? Not sure if it has, or not sure if this was a BobJ issue or an Epic issue.
Yeah, I think it was on the Epic side, but I don't know that we've necessarily, we don't focus on that in the product management side. That's more something that we do with Epic as an OEM partner. But I know we have a very strong and close relationship with them. I've actually been to the Epic headquarters once a long time ago. So I'm not actually sure of the answer to that question, but we can try and find out after the webinar.
Eventually, what I would suggest is that we've got a session this afternoon. I think it's at 2
with
p.m.
the healthcare folks, yeah.
Around healthcare, and I know both deployments that will be exchanged today are Epic shops, and That's always a concern, for people, is how can I integrate with Epic, and
Absolutely.
people use Epic and then they use, BobJ as a sidecar. There are a lot of, there's always a lot of, questions around that and integration to be done. So that's always
one thing I will say, that I do know that, a lot of the SDKs and APIs did not change going to 4.3. There are new ones that I talked about with the Service Pack 2 piece, but by and large, most of those old, integration points should still work in theory.
And by the way, in terms of predictive, just to go back on that question, I know
Sure.
actually it was UCLA Health that presented.
Because you want to get an overview of your business object.
So overall, I know that there was a presentation done by UCLA Health around how they use predictive, and I think there will be a paper or a post released by SAP around doing R in Webby.
Okay, yeah, there are ways to do the custom extension points with R now too. I've not seen that. That's not something that we provide you that R capability out of the box, but that's something that you, the customers or partners, would do, actually invoking that R and getting better things done with it. So yeah, thanks, Bruno. That's a good point.
And leveraging metadata there is very, very valuable for that.
Yeah, that's huge.
Okay, I think the next question. Did I ask the question from Ricardo?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, Ricardo was asking, shared element, will they bring customized formatting as well?
It should be. I don't know for sure, but I would think that the customized formatting of those shared elements should be there. Yep.
Okay. There was another question. I can't find the gentleman who was asking the question, but he was asking, can you confirm from when UNV will be removed?
Right now, 2020, the end of 2027 is the earliest it might be removed.
Great. Okay, next question. What are your tips to convince business users? That's always a fun one, to move from traditional Webby to, purified Webby.
To me, it's what we have found is that a lot of users who were afraid of Webby now are not afraid of it. So I think sometimes it's as simple as showing them that, hey, you know what? This is not a scary, daunting tool. It's something I can actually use in a much more simplified fashion now. So that, to me, has been one of the bigger selling points, especially, again, to those folks who, they're not traditional Webby folks or traditional BI folks. They're more in that sort of, Excel world, Tableau world, ClickTech world. It's all about the visuals, not as much about the power. And so, the being afraid of Webby, I think, has gone away when we've shown 4.3 or done workshops with people on it.
And we've got lots of questions still coming in, so let's take a couple more. I think we can do that for another 5-10 minutes. So, hey, Patrick, what do you have in that bottle?
It's just water. I'll start the good brown booze for my patron saint day later on.
Well, I've got to say, I've got an app, and we can do that later. As you've got like it's called iBeer, and then you can have a virtual Guinness at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, I have seen that as well. Yep. Can you do Guinness in the iBeer now?
You can.
That's good.
Application I got years ago. That was one of the first applications I got on my iPhone 3, I think, at the time. That was pretty funny.
I have actually opened Guinness today, though, because I'm braising some short ribs in Guinness upstairs as we speak. So.
And by the way, I've got that same hat behind, and I actually had ordered a Guinness one, but it didn't arrive on time, so I just canceled it today. So that was, I guess, the logistics were a little bit trickier around that. So
fair enough.
We've got a question from Alice.
Okay.
4.3, is it the same than before?
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
I'm guessing he's trying to check out, are the auditing capabilities in 4 similar to
yes.
the past?
They're the same or better.
Then we have another question from Adil. Let me bring it up here. Are there any changes to the CMS and audit database between 4.2 and 4.3? That's a good question.
I don't think changes to the database itself, but I do think that we've changed the monitor in the cockpit that you view those audit capabilities with.
And I'm sure that's because there were some old issues. I think it was back
Right.
4.0 or 4.1, and
Yep.
I remember there were some concerns around that. And
in the way back, yep.
Okay, we've got another question here from Matthias. Just let me appear it now. Is there a plan to fusionize BO, so BobJ and SAC, so that one day we have Webby reports within SAC? Interesting.
So there's no migration or conversion per se, but you can actually, we've had people do it now where you can kind of surface a Webby document through an iframe in an Analytics Cloud story. So you can actually do that today. It's not elegant, but it's there. The other way we're looking at that is that Analytics Hub capability I mentioned, so that you can have a Fiori tile, for instance, that said finance, and you could have maybe 3 links to 3 SAC stories related to finance, and maybe a 4th link to a Webby document that shows more of and in that case too, you could use each tool for its better purpose, right? I mean, Webby cross tabs and grids are a heck of a lot better than tabular functions within SAC. There are other block reporting things you'd want to do with the Webby document that you wouldn't want to do in SAC, but the ability to use both for analysis on the same data via the same universe, I think that's a key example for the hybrid piece.
Okay. And just by the way, just keep on asking your questions. I know we won't have time to cover all of them, but actually behind the scene you don't see, but we've got SAP product that's going to help us to answer to all these questions as always. So we'll take the time to answer to them, to all the questions we haven't covered today. So please, continue to ask your questions on that. Okay, will there be a recording of this event made available? Yes, there will be. So it's going to be available on LinkedIn, and then also you can go on the 360 Suite YouTube page. And I'm assuming as well we'll have a link on the Web Before Me page. So you see here, you can actually see the address of the YouTube page. So you just go on YouTube and then select 360 Suite channel. And then from there, you've got all the content from all the past webinars that we have. And of course, the event of today, will appear on our YouTube channel. So it's always available, and it's something that you can always go to. As well as we've got a virtual booth where you've got all the white papers that we have, all the blog articles, all the ebooks that we've published around how to migrate, how to upgrade, how to go to the cloud, how to handle security. So just feel free to just to visit our virtual booth. So the address is on the bottom. So www.booth.360suite.io, and you're more than welcome just to go and visit that. So.
And from an SAP perspective, I'll give a plug on that. I visited that booth. It's pretty good stuff out there, Bruno. Thanks.
So that's it's kind of nice, and it just probably still misses the good old human side that we had
exactly.
or actually at physical events. And I'm just looking forward to do all these events back in person, all these user groups and all these conferences, and talk about which I think it's this week.
This week would be Insider normally.
Yes, and actually there is a virtual conference for Insider, and we'll be sharing later today a link that we have from Red Cross that actually is presenting at Insider. So Ken.
Yeah, Ken Coleman. Ken Coleman.
Yes.
He's always a great, he's a great advocate of the use of the universe and interesting and good things you can do with the universe, whether it's on-prem or cloud. So he's great.
And we'll be sharing that link of his session that he's got at Insider this week. So, and there's always a lot of valuable content around that and how to do things. So there are always lots of tricks on that and tips on that.
Absolutely.
Let's take the last question before we split, Patrick. And okay, from a LinkedIn user, can we schedule to FTP in 4.3 SP2?
No, FTP is not one of the options now.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, overall, Patrick, it was really great to have you.
All right. Well, thank you, Bruno.
As always, we had a good time.